It is the end of May, which is wild. We are heading into June, which is a whole thing. I read 17 books this month, and because I read 17 books, I'm gonna need to really go real fast. I'm gonna be on X Games mode going through these books. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing I read in the month of May was Heartstopper Volumes 1, 2, and 3. Alice Oseman has my whole heart. She always will. You actually can see Solitaire right up there. Oop, oop, oop. This was the perfect, like, calming, comforting hug of a read that I needed it to be. And Sophia, I should have listened to you so much sooner than I did. Like, clock me, but I don't know what I was thinking waiting this long. Next, I read The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This was kind of an Enchantment of Ravens vibes. It's got that kind of enemies to lovers thing, but I don't know, this one was really dark, and I think when I put this on my TBR, it was actually a couple years ago, and I wasn't emotionally ready or in the place to be reading something so dark and violent and depicting so much death and oppression, systemic oppression in the world that we live in right now. So yeah, I mean, it was well written, but it was also dark. Next, I read In Real Life by Cory Doctorow. This is a cute, fun little comic graphic art about how video games and like labor abuse happen, and about encouraging activism in young people, it was lovely. I don't think I would buy it, but I'm glad that I got to read it on Libby. This month was the month of Libby. I was doing stuff left and right. Next, I read All the President's Men by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. This is about the Watergate scandal. These are the two, oh, dog hair. These are the two reporters who were huge in breaking that story. I think it's very important for Americans to verse themselves in the history of their government being oppressive and lying to you, so I highly recommend this. Speaking of powerful people in power doing bad things, I also read Catch and Kill by Ronan Farrow. This book was amazing. I cannot recommend it enough. And trigger warning for sexual assault and rape and bad men in power doing bad things and people covering it up because they're rich. But yeah. Next, I read Illness as a Metaphor by Susan Sontag, who, if I'm not mistaken, is married to Annie Leibovitz. This was written by Susan Sontag when she was undergoing treatment for cancer, and it talks about illness and how we write illness in literature, how we view illness and people who are ill, and for someone who's chronically ill, I found it very impactful, and reading it during a pandemic. A lot of the books that I read this month were pandemic related, which I don't know if that's the best thing to do for my mental health, but it's what I'm doing. So next, I read Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. We all know and love Trevor Noah. His comedy segments on, I can't remember the name of his show, but I watch all of them religiously, and he's excellent. But this book, it opens a door for you that you never knew like was closed. It gives you a perspective. It is so well written and funny, but also heartbreakingly sad. And yeah, I recommend that too. You know, it sounded like I had a really good month. Next, I read The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. You've seen my video review of this, or if you haven't, I'll put it up there in the eye, maybe? Let's see if I remember to do that. It's Maggie Stiefvater. You know, my Raven boys. Next, I read Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I put this on hold ages ago on Libby, back when I was in a real, like, dark academia kick. So when it finally came through, I was ecstatic, and it did not disappoint. It is a thriller. I was up all night reading it. You really just, the main characters are interesting. It totally, like, hits that niche of, like, the gifted kids go out to, like, Vermont, and they're all in one place, and there's a murder. God, I don't know how to articulate it, but it was excellent, and I highly recommend it. Next, I read The Deep by Soloman. I listened to the audiobook, which was voiced by David Diggs, And if you have the opportunity to absorb the story in that way, I highly recommend it. It was beautiful. So basically the idea is that there are mermaids, but they are the children of the women who were killed on slave ships, the ones that were thrown into the water. But it's brilliantly thought out biologically. There's this thought that because the children are like in the womb, which is like water, why wouldn't they be able to breathe underwater? I know that I cannot do justice to this story in a 12 second capsulation of it in a review video, but of all of the books on this list, I think that I recommend this one the most. Next, I read The Scarlet Plague by Jack London. Again, I was feeling pandemic feelings when I listened to this audiobook, which is super short, and that's why I didn't stop. It wasn't great. It was actually, I think, my first Jack London thing I've ever read, and I have to say, I did not come away with a great opinion of him, so. Next, I listened to I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. If you get the chance to listen to this on audiobook, I think that that is probably the best way to read it. I don't know because I didn't read it in physical copy, but I can tell you that the audiobook, something happens. I'm not going to tell you anything about this book because that's the best way to go into it. Something happens, and I don't think you could fully get the feeling of it without listening to it on audiobook, but 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Hungry Heart by Jennifer Weiner. My mom recommended this to me, so I read it. I don't think it was good. It wasn't good, actually. Some of the writing was funny, but it's a memoir about this writer's life, and she seems very funny, but I don't know. A lot of it was about being a mother. There was some stuff about body image, which is why my mom wanted me to read it, but I don't think it was great. I don't think it was particularly well written, which I was surprised by, especially given that she's written a lot of romance things that have received a lot of commercial success. So I was expecting a better read from her that I did not receive. I don't recommend it, but maybe it's not meant for my age bracket because my mom loved it. So next, I read Dead Astronauts by Jeff Vandermeer. I read Born by Jeff Vandermeer, which is my first Vandermeer book, in April. God, was that April? Jesus. And this is the second book in that series. I don't know if it can be called a series. The whole idea of this is that it's weird. On the back of it, it said that it described Jeff Vandermeer as Weird Thoreau, which I think totally vibes and totally checks with what he is. So the whole idea of the writing behind it is that it's not human, perspective. It's some sort of, I don't know how to describe to you what this book was. This was going on an acid trip, but I went on this acid trip with Jeff Vandermeer, so I can't complain. It was lovely. I mean, it's definitely, his writing is beautiful. It's very vivid. You see everything. The descriptions are incredible and exactly what you need when you're creating a world that is so unlike our own. So I do recommend it. It's just weird as heck. Weird as heck. Finally, I read The Dreamers by Karen Walker. I just finished this 20 minutes ago. This is another plague book, and a lot of it was about quarantine, which is a part of the reason why I was so excited to pick it up. And I have to say, did not disappoint. I really enjoyed not only the plague and the idea of the illness that they were dealing with, but also, I don't know, those last couple pages where some people recovered. Obviously not everyone did, some people died, but some people recovered, and it discussed the pandemic being over, and I don't know, that hit different for me. I think I'm going to recommend The Dreamers by Karen Walker as my top pandemic book, and I read quite a few this month. So if you're looking for something to read that relates to pandemics or plagues, I think this might be it. Those are all 17 books that I read in the month of May. I hope that you are safe and healthy, and if you are out there protesting, I thank you for your bravery, and I implore you to be careful, to document, and to not be quiet. So links will be in the description for ways that you can help with the protests happening all over the United States right now.